Muhammad and Khilafat by ex-Brigadier Mustansar Billah. Muhammad and Khilafat by ex-Brigadier Mustansar Billah. We continue with our subject today, that is Understanding Democracy. Lesson 10. Lesson 10, Understanding Democracy. We continue with the subject. And in this, we were on the last portion, that is the fifth portion, majoritarianism. The fifth and last portion, majoritarianism. Democracy constitutes, my apologies, democratic constitutions are no longer to be understood as devices for restraining governments, but rather as instruments for carrying out the will of the people, for ensuring that government does what electoral majorities want it to do. I repeat, democratic constitutions are no longer to be understood as devices for restraining governments, but rather as instruments for carrying out the will of the power, for ensuring that government does what electoral majorities want it to do. Any portion of the Constitution that does not promote the power of electoral majorities has to be changed forthwith. It must not be freedom from government. It must not be freedom from government, as in the case of monarchies and dictatorships, military regimes, but freedom through government. Freedom through government. Two major problems have to be resolved to ensure the rule of the majority. First, the necessity for restraints on the government and the instruments through which the electorate can maintain these restraints, which unfortunately most of the democracies do not have. Which unfortunately most of the democracies do not have such instruments to restrain the government. Second, to resolve the problem of deciding what the government is to do in the name of all, and the instruments through which the authentic voice of the electorate is heard and translated into action. Here too, mafias and pressure groups are normally more effective. Here too, mafias and pressure groups are normally more effective. Unless these two problems are resolved through satisfactory and reliable modus operandi, it can't be said that majoritarianism, the rule of majority, has been established. Normally, the solutions are more hypothetical, and people are genuinely not satisfied, and people are genuinely not satisfied. Some other problems of majoritarianism include: 1. There are many systems of voting, like cumulative vote elections, preferential vote majority election, proportional representation, etc. All are being followed in various countries and states, each having own merits, but none is really an accurate system of gauging the views of the majority. 2. Majorities have to placate minorities before they can become majorities. Majorities have to placate minorities before they can become majorities. 3. A party may get less than the majority of the popular votes, yet obtain a majority of the seats in parliament. Thus, one sees a party in power with 70% of the popular vote against it. A party may get less than the majority of the popular votes, yet obtain a majority of the seats in parliament. Thus, one sees a party in power with 70% of the popular vote against it. Normally, all the oppositions are divided into various groups and various opposition parties, and so one of the party with relatively more votes wins. Four, agencies like CIA, Gestapo of the 21st century, ISI, etc., may, if they decide, manipulate the elections to their own choice. 5. In countries like Pakistan, national interests may get compromised because of rivalries, animosities based on families, brotherries, castes, and personality worship, etc. In countries like Pakistan, national interests may get compromised because of rivalries, animosities based on families, brotherries, castes, and personality worship, etc. Next, 6. Coercion, reward, bribery often plays havoc with elections. Coercion, reward, bribery often plays havoc with the elections. 7. Poverty, illiteracy, injustice, lack of security has catastrophic effects on the elections. Poverty, illiteracy, injustice, lack of security has catastrophic effects on the elections. 8. The government machinery is often tasked to produce the desired results, and every official endeavors to save his post, perks, and privileges in the third world countries. 9. Even in model democratic countries like USA, various pressure groups manipulate the elections to their own benefit interest. It is well recognized in USA that 70 senators whose names are also known are the proxies of the Jews. It is well recognized in the USA that well back many years back, that 70 senators whose names are also known are the proxies of USA. At this time, there may be more. The spiteful, malicious role that the media plays in USA is well known. The spiteful, malicious role that the media plays in USA is well known. The major newspapers of USA, Washington Post, New York Times, Bastion, Globe, belongs to the Jews. The major newspapers of USA, Washington Post, New York Times, Bastion, Globe, belong to the Jews. Topping it all, CNN, ABC, Fox, and NBC are all Jew channels. Topping it all, CNN, ABC, Fox, and NBC are all Jew channels. People think they are free to decide and have taken their own decisions. The truth is much different. It's a misnomer. The majority is a helpless victim of the media today. Media makes the majorities. It's a misnomer. The majority is a helpless victim of the media today, media makes the majorities. 10. It has been observed in USA that 95% of the senators are getting elected over and over again since the last 40 years. It has been observed in USA that 95% of the senators are getting elected over and over again since the last 40 years. All these senators are among the wealthiest people of the society, owners of factories, estates, ranches, etc. Once they are elected, if they if they don't acquire the expertise of amassing funds for their party, they lose the next elections. Various interest groups contribute heavy funds for the protection, security of their own interests. Even the third world countries have been funding them covertly for their own national interest. For example, China's assistance in the elections of Bill Clinton, which became public. For example, China's assistance in the election of Bill Clinton, which became public, and the money was reverted. The rich bludgeon their interests into anything. As such, with the exception of UK, perhaps it is said democracy is a system of government of the rich, for the rich, and by the rich. With the exception of UK, perhaps it is said democracy is a system of government for the rich, government of the rich, for the rich, and by the rich. The problem of rich and the poor doesn't exist in the sparsely populated Scandinavian countries where the entire population is rich. Lastly, 6. My apologies. Lastly, the main part, constitutionalism. After majority is right, majoritarianism, it is now constitutionalism. meshed closely related meshed closely related with the idea of sovereignty of the people and secularism is the ideal of constitutionalism in democracy, beginning with the conviction that the actions of the government should be in accordance with law carefully laid down as a priority as a priority. This is accomplished by establishing a fundamental law, a constitution that defines the organs of the government, prescribing how they shall be, prescribing how they shall function, and outlining the basic relationships between government and the private citizens. Government is then denied the power to change this fundamental law, except by carefully circumscribed method, and is required to observe its terms. Actually, of course, constitutionalism is a means for achieving the ideal rule by law. Actually, of course, constitutionalism is a means for achieving the ideal rule by law. But in the democratic world, the Constitution, be it written, unwritten, or mixed, has become a symbol around which men who are in disagreement on other points can be rallied. A special sanctity attaches to the Constitution and a special hatred to unconstitutional action or proposal. The phenomena of philosophy, the phenomena of a government conforming to the dictates of a settled constitution is known as constitutionalism. Corey and Abraham, Elements of Democratic Government, New York, Oxford University Press, 1964. The phenomena of a government co- conforming to the dictates of a settled constitution is known as constitutionalism. Here we end with the subject of understanding democracy, and inshallah, in the next session, we'll start with the next subject, that is Khilafat and democracy, comparative analysis. Next subject, inshallah, would be, Allah be willing, Khilafat and democracy, comparative analysis tomorrow, inshallah. Till then, please pray for me, ex Brigadier Mustansir Billah.